The Americans, Chapter 14, A New Industrial Age. Section 1, The Expansion of Industry. One day, Petilio Higgins noticed bubbles in the springs around Spindletop, a hill near Beaumont in southeastern Texas. This and other signs convinced him that oil was underground. If Higgins found oil, it could serve as a fuel source around which a vibrant industrial city would develop. Higgins, who had been a mechanic and a lumber merchant, couldn't convince geologists or investors that oil was present, but he didn't give up. A magazine ad seeking investors got one response from Captain Anthony F. Lucas, an experienced prospector who also believed that there was oil at Spindletop. When other investors were slow to send money, Higgins kept his faith, not only in Spindletop, but in Lucas. A personal voice, Petilio Higgins. Captain Lucas, these experts can come and tell you this or that can't happen because it has never happened before. You believe there is oil here, and I think you are right. I know there is oil here in greater quantities than man has ever found before. In 1900, the two men found investors, and they began to drill that autumn. After months of difficult, frustrating work, on the morning of January 10th, 1901, oil gushed from the well. The Texas oil boom had begun. Part 1. Natural Resources Fuel Industrialization. After the Civil War, the United States was still largely an agricultural nation. By the 1920s, a mere 60 years later, it had become the leading industrial power in the world. This immense industrial boom was due to several factors, including a wealth of natural resources, government support for business, and a growing urban population that provided both cheap labor and markets for new products. Black gold. Though Eastern Native American tribes had made fuel and medicine from crude oil long before Europeans arrived on the continent, early American settlers had little use for oil. In the 1840s, Americans began using kerosene to light lamps after the Canadian geologist Abraham Gessner discovered how to distill the fuel from oil or coal. It wasn't until 1859, however, when Edwin L. Drake successfully used a steam engine to drill for oil near Titusville, Pennsylvania, that removing oil from beneath the Earth's surface became practical. This breakthrough started an oil boom that spread to Kentucky, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, and eventually Texas. Petroleum refining industries arose in Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and as entrepreneurs rushed to transform the oil into kerosene, gasoline, a byproduct of the refining process, originally was thrown away, but after the automobile became popular, gasoline became the most important form of oil. Bessemer steel process. Oil was not the only natural resource that was plentiful in the United States. There was also abundant deposits of coal and iron. In 1887, prospectors discovered iron ore deposits more than 100 miles long and up to 3 miles wide in the Mesabi Range of Minnesota. At the same time, coal production skyrocketed from 33 million tons in 1870 to more than 250 million tons in 1900. Iron is a dense metal, but it is soft and tends to break and rust. It also usually contains other elements, such as carbon. Removing the carbon from iron produces a lighter, more flexible, and rust-resistant metal, steel. The raw materials needed to make steel were readily available. All that was needed was a cheap and efficient manufacturing process. The Bessemer process, developed independently by the British manufacturer Henry Bessemer and American iron maker William Kelly around 1850, soon became widely used. This technique involved injecting air into molten iron to remove the carbon and other impurities. By 1880, American manufacturers were using the new method to produce more than 90% of the nation's steel. In this age of rapid change and innovation, even the successful Bessemer process was bettered by the 1860s. It was eventually replaced by the open hearth process, enabling manufacturers to produce quality steel from scrap metal as well as from raw materials. New uses for steel. The railroads, with thousands of miles of track, became the biggest customers for steel, but inventors soon found additional use for it. Joseph Glidden's barbed wire and McCormick's and Deere's farm machines helped transform the plains into the food producer of the nation. Steel changed the face of the nation as well, as it made innovative construction possible. One of the most remarkable structures was the Brooklyn Bridge, completed in 1883. It spanned 1,595 feet of the East River in New York City. Its steel cables were supported by towers higher than any man-made and weight-bearing structure except the pyramids of Egypt. Like those ancient marvels, the completed bridge was called a wonder of the world. Around this time, setting the stage for a new era of expansion upward as well as outward, William LeBaron Jenney designed the first skyscrapers with steel frame, the Home Insurance Building in Chicago. Before Jenney had his pioneering idea, the weight of large buildings was supported entirely by their walls or by iron frames, which limited the building's height. With a steel frame to support the weight, however, architects could build as high as they wanted. As structures soared into the air, not even the sky seemed to limit what Americans could achieve. Part 2. Inventions promote change. By capitalizing on natural resources and their own ingenuity, inventors changed more than the landscape. Their inventions affected the very way people lived and worked. The power of electricity. In 1876, Thomas Alva Edison became a pioneer in the new industrial frontier when he established the world's first research laboratory in Menlo Park, New Jersey. There, Edison perfected the incandescent light bulb, patented in 1880, and later invented an entire system for producing and distributing electrical power. Another inventor, George Westinghouse, along with Edison, had inventions that made electricity safer and less expensive. The harnessing of electricity completely changed the nature of business in America. By 1890, electric power ran numerous machines, from fans to printing presses. This inexpensive, convenient source of energy soon became available in homes and spurred the invention of time-saving appliances. Electric streetcars made the urban travel cheap and efficient and also promoted the outward spread of cities. More important, electricity allowed manufacturers to locate their plants wherever they wanted, not just near sources of power such as rivers. This enabled industry to grow as never before. Huge operations such as Armour and Swift meatpacking plants and the efficient processes that they used became the models for new consumer industries. Inventions changed lifestyles. Edison's light bulb was only one of several revolutionary inventions. Christopher Sholes invented the typewriter in 1867 and changed the world of work. Next to the light bulb, however, perhaps the most dramatic invention was the telephone, unveiled by Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Watson in 1876. It opened the way for worldwide communications networks. The typewriter and telephone particularly affected office work and created new jobs for women. Although women made up less than 5% of all office workers in 1870, by 1910 they accounted for nearly 40% of the clerical workforce. New inventions also had a tremendous impact on factory work, as well as on jobs that traditionally had been done at home. For example, women had previously sewn clothes by hand for their families. With industrialization, clothing could be mass-produced in factories, creating a need for garment workers, many of whom were women. Industrialization freed some factory workers from back-breaking labor and helped improve workers' standard of living. By 1890, the average work week had been reduced by about 10 hours. However, many laborers felt that mechanization of so many tasks reduced human workers' worth. As consumers, though, workers regained some of their lost power in the marketplace. The country's expanding urban population provided a vast potential market for new inventions and products in the late 1800s.